Yeah, but like yeah, so going back to like there's a lot of systems for like who got the loot. Loot councils. There's DKP systems that basically were in theory intended to kind of keep people interested in the raid. You basically earn points as you participate in raids. And basically participating in raids means you got these points that you can basically spend on getting more items. Usually on a bidding system for items.
which I hated. Like,
Right.
like in theory, I liked the concept, but in practice, with all the groups that I knew that used DKP, it was toxic as hell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially, it's supposed to be kind of like a way to kind of pawn off the responsibilities of a loot council.
Right, right. I never had a loot council. We usually did it, like in all the groups that I did it, like the raid leader would determine.
Right. Loot council or loot master. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and that works pretty well. The problem you run into, of course, is that when somebody kind of feels like they're getting screwed out.
Right, right.
When the person is like, oh, or like either I'm never gonna get a piece of loot, or why did newbie get the piece of loot when I needed it too.
Mm.
You just kind of like have to deal with sometimes there's a bit of pettiness where where people are kind of like, again, we're focusing on the loot rather than hoping the group could progress together. Yeah, and so there's systems kind of intended to be, and there's and there's a lot of DKP systems too. Another one was where you could spend points and then you do a random roll to see and then basically like the points you spent basically gave you a bonus to your roll.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard of that one before.
Yeah, and that was so basically kind of the idea behind that type of system is that it's still randomized, so it's you wouldn't get like the collusion like you would with pure bid DKP systems.
There's still a little bit of, because people find randomness as being fair.
Right.
If we want to go the Thanos route of explaining things.
Right.
So if you have a little bit of RNG still involved, then there's less chance of people going, oh, that's unfair. They'll just go, fuck my luck.
Right.
So less people getting pissed off at each other.
Right. More people kind of rallying around RNGesus or Lucifer.
I haven't heard that one before.
Oh, you haven't heard that one?
Oh, no,
yeah.
that one got me good. Holy shit.
Yeah, sometimes if RNGesus is not answering your prayers, it's time to make a sacrifice to Lucifer.
Oh my goodness. That makes so much more sense.
Yeah, you would have gotten so much more stuff if you knew. Yeah, and so so there's a lot of. We also talked about kind of like the world first accomplishments, which is really is kind of a player motivated thing. Like this is players kind of working toward this. Often in games there would be no necessarily official recognition of this. I think World of Warcraft occasionally did what do you call it?
World first achievements.
World first achievements, yeah.
And it would announce to everybody.
Right.
That somebody got a world first.
Right. But in the early days, Nixie and whatnot in World of Warcraft, the bringing the head back to the capital city.
Oh yeah.
Everybody buff would be kind of a big event.
Well, and that was part of a quest too.
Right.
To get the sword.
Right. The other
Closer
thing.
art. That's it.
Yeah.
That's been driving me crazy.
Crazier. Another thing we talked about basically was kind of the concept of metas, of meta strategy. Kind of the idea of things like group competition, group composition, or things like that. Like the importance of like having the right blend of like
everything.
right.
Yeah, like my brain. Oh my god, I can't think. My brain's just not working. Like in that thing I used to do, Quiz of Bahamut.
Right.
There are certain fights where you wanted a summoner, and then there were certain fights you wanted a black mage.
Right.
Because the black mage was the AoE damage powerhouse caster, but summoner could do like 50% better single target damage. So we had a black mage main that we would have to ask to learn summoner for certain fights, because otherwise with our group in particular we did not have the DPS to beat the boss when they were on black mage.
Right.
So it was another friendship versus performance.
Right.
We
Right.
had to have her as a summoner even though she hated it,
Right.
because otherwise we wouldn't progress.
Right.
Which, I mean, but then, like, the next fight, we would need her on Black Mage because it had a lot of AoE trash spawns, ad spawns. So, like, it would be, like, a momentary discomfort for them. But she hated having to be on Summoner. So that was, like, a meta decision. Like, a decision that we needed a certain class for a meta.
Right, right. And so, and to kind of fill in people that maybe aren't as savvy about rating, a meta is basically kind of like a meta consideration for like what works in order to most efficiently clear some part of content. Usually the big thing we talk about is basic class composition.
Or like there's also meta statting too.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, basically like saying, oh, if you play this class, then because like in Final Fantasy 14, you can slot materia. If you depending on the class you play, like you generally want to stat certain types of materia.
Like Bard is all, well, I mean most DPS is stacking direct hit and critical hit.
Right.
They've made the stat optimizations very simple for DPS.
Right.
I mean I could go into the numbers, but I'm not sure if you want to go into that. But basically, you want to stack direct hit up to a certain point, and then you hit a soft cap on direct hit, and then you just stack critical hit after that. Basically, direct hit and critical hit are the same thing. It's just they're both two different types of criticals, basically, but they can happen simultaneously and become a direct crit.
Right. I think direct hit happens more often, but it's a little less magnitude or something like that.
Yeah, it's weaker.
Right.
So like that's why with direct hit in particular, it hits a soft cap at like 1,500 direct hit.
Right.
You want to hit 2,500 crit and direct hit total, and once you get past 2,500 of both combined, then you just stack crit after that point, because you've hit the crit direct hit chance cap at that point.
Right. Peak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and so so basically so basically discussions like that are kind of a discussion of meta stuff, and so in theory this allows like DPS to do maximum damage, especially given the context of especially in the context of the them because the crits and direct hits are basically randomized. So yeah, it's basically it's all about kind of like following a pattern or whatnot in order to maximize your effectiveness in the guild. And this can be kind of like a little bit frustrating because a lot of times, sometimes, or in my opinion, a lot of times metas tend to kind of dominate a little too much. Like, oh, you can't possibly take, whatever, you can't build for this thing. Because a lot of times, like, it felt like, like the metas were kind of optimized for a certain type of playstyle that, may not be your playstyle, essentially.
Right, right. Like, at the time that I was raiding in Warcraft with Wrath of the Lich King, there was a certain meta rotation for, like, the most optimized rotation for Feral Druid. And I physically could not do it because it was so taxing on my hand. Like, my hand just did not go that fast. And so, like, I had to go with, like, the second best rotation, which in reality only equated to like a 0.0005% difference in DPS, because that most meta rotation was like target dummy if there's no mechanics happening.
Right, exactly. And this is one of the issues I have like with a lot of, with statting or rotations or whatnot. They tend to be kind of in an ideal situation, and it's like one of those things like, well, I know I'm gonna have to move, or like, especially like if it's one of those things like, in World of Warcraft, back in the early days, druids were one of the few classes that could basically res in combat.
Right.
Well, some druids like absolutely refuse to res in combat because, well, that screws up my DPS.
Right.
And it's just like that's not the point. Like, the amount of DPS you're gaining by not resing the person is not, overcoming the DPS loss because of them. Yeah. Admittedly, like a lot of times, like, sometimes the player was it was a stupid player that basically, like pushed things too hard and, and got killed. But it's like, well, you're kind of doing us to failure by,
taking that risk.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I